So, hello, welcome to episode 5 of Playground. This is the community event for Play by Jellynote, hosted by myself. I am JC the Beard. I'm the brass section leader here. And my co host today is Dana, who is our strings section leader. So, if you don't know who we are the section leaders, kind of community engagement people that focus on developing the Play community and doing arrangements for the Play platform and just being resources for different people to come and ask questions or get support on things and just generally be encouragers. So that's me. Dana, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. As said, I am Dana. I am the string section leader. Participating without video today because I am feeling a little bit under the weather. So JC will be participating as usual. Unfortunately, I'm like this today, so just bear with me. But yeah, we are. If you don't know who we are already, JC pretty much said it all. We are here to help you guys to answer your questions and to make play an awesome experience for you. And today, specifically, we're going to be talking about practice tips and tricks. That's going to kind of be our main topic of the day. So, JC, what are some of your really good practice tips? What are some of your thoughts on practice? You want to start us off?
Sure. So I always try to look at practice as, like most people, a preparation for a performance. And if you don't have something that you're really working toward performance wise, then I always like to consider just getting better and learning different things and becoming more confident as a performer, the performance, so to speak. I don't know if you saw my air quotes in the camera or not. I have it framed kind of tightly, but I like to generally kind of plan things out if I'm going to be practicing. You're never really going to be productive if you just kind of pick up the instrument like, oh, I'm just gonna goof off or whatever for an hour and a half and just call that practicing. Like, okay, well, you're playing, but are you really actually doing anything aside from just having fun? Which is fine. But the thing I always like to do is I like to have a plan. I like to delineate specifically what I'm working on, what my goals are. Like, okay, I have like this piece of music I'm trying to play this week. I'm trying to get better. What about it is hard? What about it am I not currently getting? And what do I think I need to be specifically working on to improve? Whether that's, okay, my tuning on this long note is off, or my articulations are bad, or I keep missing these accidentals or whatever. Like, make a list of things that you are struggling with or that you might want to improve, or just even general things like I want to make for brass instruments especially, like the roundness of the sound, the tone quality, and different things like that that are specific to the instrument that you're playing. Maybe that should be something you should be considering. I also, especially for brass, different instruments are different ways in terms of like how you produce sound and everything. But as far as muscles and like muscle memory and the playing health of all that stuff, proper fundamentals and proper warm up is crucial. Like, if, for example, I'm going to have a lot of brass references here because that's what I play, but I'm sure Dana can have different input on strings and other things like that. But if you're a brass player and your warm up consists of just blasting high notes at maximum volume until your face falls off, one, that's not a warm up. That's bad. That's dumb. Don't do that. You're going to wear out your face. You're not going to have a good time because your face is going to hurt. You might even bleed or whatever. Like, you're not going to get anywhere by just going full tilt right from the get go. You got to start slow, start with your long tones. You got to do breathing exercises, get yourself in the right frame of mind, and get your body trained to begin practicing properly as well. You can't just go 0 to 100 from a dead start. It's like when you're starting a car in the winter, you don't floor it, right? You're gonna break something. It's just not gonna work well. So you always have to approach it from a perspective of getting your mind and your body aligned to have a productive practice session and acclimate yourself to that, and not just jump into the deep end right off the bat. So also in terms of fundamentals, it's almost, in my opinion, more important to focus on fundamentals than it is to focus on the actual technicalities of what you're doing. Like, especially for brass playing, I know I'm gonna harp on this a lot because it's really important, but breathing exercises are very important because that's what fuels your sound, so to speak. The air is the fuel, the embouchure, your mouth is, I guess, the engine, and then the instrument is going to amplify whatever that is. So if you don't have a solid fundamental for your breathing and your buzzing and all of the different things that go into making the sound on your instrument, you're not going to have a good time. You're not going to sound good, and you're going to get frustrated a lot easier because the basics aren't there. And if you don't have the tools you need to practice and perform appropriately, then you can't really expect it to be good, can you? No. That's my thoughts on that. And then I guess I have one more real big one that particularly I've kind of struggled with a lot is getting frustrated when practicing, like especially if you're a perfectionist or you have tend to have issues with thinking, "Oh, I should be able to do this. It's easy." Or whatever, and then it doesn't happen, you get really, really frustrated. That can turn into something that is very detrimental to not only your state of mind or your long-term well-being, but also like your physiological, like how you interact with your instrument, reinforcing bad habits or improper technique or whatever. If you get frustrated, it's okay to take a break. Like you can walk away, take 5-10 minutes, go listen to some other music that you're not practicing, or go have a snack and brush your teeth. If you're a brass player or a woodwind player, please don't grow garbage inside of your instruments from your nasty breath. But it's just, again, the mental component of this is very important. So if you have problems with frustration, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to even just say, all right, I'm done with today. I'm going to come back tomorrow when I have a refreshed frame of mind, or I'm just going to go change my perspective, go take a walk, go pet my cat or whatever, and come back and have a renewed, I hesitate to say renewed sense of spirit because I feel like that's kind of a little too dramatic for this, but it really does help just change your perspective if you're struggling with something and come back and have a better outlook on it. So that's my main four things that I try to keep in mind when I'm practicing personally. But I know it's different for everybody and it's different for different instruments. So I'm interested to see what Dana has to say about this.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you're saying. First of all of that is extremely good advice, which I can certainly relate to. And one of the things that I also wanted to discuss was perfectionism and perfectionist tendencies and all of that sort of stuff, because that is very much something that I have to manage. And I think that's something that is particularly inherent with string players. Not to say that other instruments don't also experience this, because of course, but that is particularly a thing in sort of the culture of string playing, if you will. And that is something that can so easily, that frame of mind and that way of thinking can so easily be transferred to other people and to yourself and everything. It can be so easy to get caught up in all of that. And so, something that I really want to talk about, and a point that I really want to drive home, is that, of course, you want your practice to be as targeted and driven as possible. But it's also okay if you are not able to do those things. If you're kind of in a weird muddly place about it, if something is just really unclear, if you feel like you aren't necessarily making progress. There's a ton of reasons why you might not be making progress, too many to diagnose in one show episode. But there is a lot of merit to keep on muddling through and to keep on doing your best, even when doing your best is not even when your best is not very good, which I think that we all have those days. It's really important to be able to muddle through that and keep going, because I think that it really is the antithesis of that perfectionism. Because for perfectionism, if you're not doing something perfectly, it could be so hard to keep going. So I think that going even when what you're doing is imperfect is incredibly important. So thank you for bringing that up. That was something that's also on my mind. And as far as other practice tips, I am going to be taking a slightly different approach to what you were saying, because something that I have learned a lot in recent years is the power of deadlines, I'll call it. So, just like you were saying, it's so easy. Well, not always easy, but it is for me significantly easier to practice if I have a deadline coming up, right? It's so much easier to practice for a tangible concert, event, whatever, than it is just to practice for the sake of practicing. And so if you also find those deadlines somewhat helpful, setting deadlines like that for yourself can be great if you don't have, if you are in a period where you don't have a concert or something like that coming up. Like for example, the summer, I know that a lot of musicians go to camps and stuff in the summer, but a lot of musicians don't. And so the summer could be a very weird and nebulous time for practice, I find. And so setting little deadlines for yourself, like I want to learn a 3 octave D major scale in 1 week or whatever, and setting those out, charting those out, that can be incredibly important. And something else that this is slightly related just because of the way that I personally do my practice. Um, if you have a larger work that you're working on, just this is just a fun little tip that's sort of tangentially related to what I was just saying. But for example, if you have like a memorization deadline for something, put the music on your wall by your practice space where you can see it, and then you could go through and highlight it. So, like, highlight all of the parts that you have already memorized or something like that, because having a visual representation of those things can be really, really helpful. Visual representation of what you have done, a visual representation of your deadlines or whatever. I find that making those things physical instead of just, something that you're holding up there in your brain, making your practice goals, deadlines, etc. physical can really, really help. So, and there's tons of different ways to do that. There's tons of different ways that will resonate with each individual person, but that's something that I've done quite a bit. Another one, I'm just kind of rapid fire listing these off, because honestly, I am not very good at practice. I struggle a lot with practice. I'm actually on kind of an extended practice break right now, just because it's a good time to do that. That's something that I needed to do for myself. But yeah, I'm just kind of rapid fire listing these off because I have many of them because I struggle with practice quite a bit. But um, another great one that something you said reminded me of this one, JC. But another really, really fantastic one is to do 15 minutes on and 5 minutes off. And you can plan your practice sessions just like you were saying, JC, planning those out, having a practice journal or whatever. That is an incredibly useful way to track your goals, and this is a tool that you can use. Well, this is another tool that you can use for your practice. So, for 15 minutes, you focus on one thing. You say, I want to have the first, I don't know, 2 lines of this memorized by the end of these 15 minutes. And by setting yourself that very short deadline, we're back to deadlines again. Um, you I won't speak for, you, the listener, but I find that by setting myself these deadlines, these really, really short 15-minute chunks, I am able to get so much more done than I would in just, "Oh, I have 2 hours to practice, so I'll do some of this and some of this and some of this." So 15 minutes on and then 5 minutes off. You take a break, you do not focus on your instrument. And then the next 15 minutes, you focus on something totally different. Even if you didn't meet your goal for the last 15 minutes, that's okay. Focus on something completely different for 15 and then off for 5. And I guarantee you will find yourself so much more productive. So you can plan out your practice sessions around these chunks. Say, I'm going to do, 15 minutes of XYZ for a warm up. Then I'm going to do 15 minutes of scales, then 15 minutes of, whatever. It's do your own thing. But those are some of my practice tips that I have messed around with off the top of my head. I have many more, but there's only so many things that you can fit in one show. If you also find that you can Geez, if you also find that you struggle with practice, excuse me, you can also feel free to shoot me or JC a message anytime. We love to talk about this stuff, and I imagine that both of us have so many more tips than we are able to condense into one episode. So you are always welcome to message us if you have more specific questions. But those are some of my most helpful tips. JC, anything else that you would like to add to any of that?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the whole setting like the 15-minute chunks of different things up, because that's a really good strategy that, especially my time in, say, like marching band, for example, is where most of my performance and teaching experiences come from. Is and whenever you have like a large group ensemble that's rehearsing, and you have to corral, I don't know, 200, 300 people into focusing, is very, very, very hard, because different people's attention spans almost never line up, and it's very, very easy to get into an unproductive rehearsal environment very quickly. So something that we always did was we would split up stuff into chunks. We quite literally, we called it chunking. Like we'd have different like sets in the show. I don't know, depending on who you are, where you are, if you're watching this later, you might not be familiar with how marching band works, but basically you have different sets or pictures that the band makes on the field by positioning different people, and you have different music that's played during that. So what we would do is we'd identify different areas, like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20-second segments that needed work, and we'd just go and repeat those and repeat them and over and over and over and over until it was good, and then we'd move on. Or if it was bad, okay, time for a break, and then come back and try it again, and then move on to something else. So don't be afraid to experiment and see if any of these techniques that we've mentioned work for you. And if they don't, that's okay. Everybody's different. So it just takes a lot of experimentation and honest effort on your part as the musician who's practicing to figure out what works for you and what doesn't, and adapt it to your individual practice routine. And there's all sorts of different things that we haven't had time to cover, but I did want to mention a couple other ones that I've personally have found effective for brass practicing. Like when I was in the School of Music under I won't name him specifically to protect my identity, but the euphonium professor that I was studying under was really a big fan of things like note isolation, rhythm isolation, and inverting the music, well, like turning the sheet of music upside down on the stand and sight reading it like that, to just kind of break your mind out of the mold of, oh, okay, this goes to this note, goes to that note, goes to this other note. And after a while, you can get kind of bogged down just seeing the same thing over and over and over again. But if you deconstruct it, you say, okay, well, I want to play this line or these four measures on isolated on the concert F pitch, then that makes you more acutely aware of your articulations and your note durations, and especially your tuning, even though it's the same note. That's not like technically what the passage is written to be. You're going to be more aware of the other things. You take away one of your, I guess, sources of stimulation, if you will, and you can become more attuned to the rest of them combined. So that's something that's worked really well for me in the past. Sight reading, if you ever get really, really frustrated on something specific that you're working on, go try something else. Just flip to some other page in your exercise book, or go to some other section of the piece and just say, hey, I wonder what this sounds like, and try to thumb through it. Just reset your brain and figure out what other stuff you might be able to focus on just for a brief time before going back to something else. You might find that it works for you, might find that doesn't, but the key here is what we're getting at. Find out what works for you, and I think you're going to be much happier and much more effective in your practice time. And then you get to play better music, and then you get to play with better musicians, and you have more fun, which makes you want to practice more, and the cycle repeats. But that's what we've got for our general practice tips. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out, whether private message or on the Play Discord or anything. We're happy to talk about this at pretty much any time. Well, I mean, I have to sleep at some point, but my DMs are always open. I will get back to you when I can, if I am not able to talk at that exact moment. But let's go ahead and move on to the next segment of the show we like to call The Sound of Music, which is where we talk about a piece that is up on the Play web app. This week, we're going to talk about an arrangement I did of the Tetris theme for brass ensemble that has been a really popular thing that a lot of people have actually made plays on for the past I guess week and a half, 2 weeks now, I think is how long it's been up. But it's fun. I did one last week, was one of our blind test things. We'll get to the blind test in a little bit, but I recorded all the parts myself on all the instruments that I own, and that was a lot of fun. It was hard because it's a lot of playing and I'm not really a good trumpet player, so the trumpet part was kind of hard. But anyway, I guess that goes back to the whole practicing discussion we just had. You got to work on your weaknesses and identify what you need to improve. So I'm going to be doing a lot of trumpet and trombone practicing over the next couple weeks to get better at that. But I wanted to talk about this one today because it's a really fun piece of music that a lot of people, especially if you're a younger millennial, or I guess pretty much any millennial really probably would have played it at some point. The Gen Z and younger audience might not be as familiar with it, but it's a fun, addictive piece of music. The arrangement I made isn't particularly difficult. It's on again, it's on Play. Some other people, guitarists, bassists, string players have had a crack at it, and there's some other things that you can check out on the Play platform as well for that. But it's a lot of fun. I did want to go ahead and open up for questions if any of you have questions about the process of arranging for Play or that specific arrangement that I just mentioned, or anything that we've covered so far, because we do have a little bit of time for that. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now, or you can message me later. But I did want to give a few moments in case anyone wanted to interject in the discussion.
If not, that's also perfectly fine.
Mm.
All right, all good for now. Should we I would actually also like to as you were saying about play, JC, I think that it's also important to note this is something that people like to ask a lot. But something important to remember about play is that you do not have to be restricted to only playing parts that are your own instrument. So I would not be restricted to only be playing violin parts. In fact, it is very much the opposite. We very much encourage people to play parts that are not written for their primary instrument, and to be creative with it, mess around, play around. I mean, it's in the name, right? So it is play as a platform that is there for you to have fun, be creative, and explore. So you never need to feel restricted by, things like instrument or anything like that. So I wanted to toss in a quick plug for that.
That's all the time we have for this event today. Thank you to those of you who joined us. Thank you if you're watching this in the, I guess I can't call it a VOD because this isn't Twitch, but the replay on YouTube. Thank you as well. Again, we do this every week, every Saturday around the same time. We vote on topics in the Discord the week before, and then as always, you're welcome to join us for the live taping, if you will, the live stream in the Discord channel every Saturday in the Weekend Fun channel. And the Discord's lots of fun for the rest of the week too. We got people that are fun to talk to about music things or just anything in general, hang out, and also talking about what it means and strategies, tips and tricks, and just appreciating performances on the Play platform itself. So if you haven't had a chance to take advantage of that, I would heavily encourage you to do so. It's a lot of fun, and we would love to have you involved. But yeah, thanks Dana for being my co-host today. Thank you if you joined us today, and thank you if you're watching back on YouTube. That's all we've got for this week. We'll see you in the next episode of Playground. Bye-bye.